You know, people told me I was crazy from day one. Like straight up, you've lost your mind, man, kind of crazy. They said there's no way a guy with a small business, two kids, and absolutely zero experience with heavy machinery could build his own house, let alone on 12 acres of mountain land 12 miles from the nearest paved road. But what they never understood was what this patch of earth actually meant to me. This wasn't some romantic cabin in the woods fantasy I cooked up on a bored Sunday. This was the dream that had been burning inside me since I was a kid, climbing trees with a hammer clipped to my belt, a beat-up old copy of off-grid living wedged between my PB&J and my hopes. So 2017 rolls around. After years, almost a whole decade, restoring beat-up Victorians and tired old craftsman houses for other people, I finally snapped up my own slice of wild heaven. 12 acres of steep cedar right there in the Clark County mountains, untouched by utility lines, untouched by zoning boards, and God bless it, untouched by HOAs. It wasn't cheap, and it definitely wasn't convenient. There was no driveway, no running water, no cell reception, not a single thing to make life easier except pure sky and silence. But standing on the edge of that bluff looking out over the canyon, I just knew. I knew this was the place. The one. No rules, no gates, no HOA directors peering over their clipboards, just dirt, sky, and the promise of something that finally belonged to us. I didn't hire a crew, didn't call in any favors. I did what I'd always done. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. That first summer, I cleared brush-leveled slopes with a rented skid steer I had to YouTube just to start and nearly flipped it on my own foot more than once. Hauled gravel by hand, set rebar with my boy, mixed concrete with a rusty old mixer that sounded like a dying walrus and probably scared away every animal for miles. We slept in a tent. My wife, our two kids, all of us together, while the coyotes howled at the dark and raccoons worked overtime to try to steal everything we owned. We had sunburn blisters and one working camp stove that you had to sweet talk to light. But every splinter, every bent nail, every beam and bolt, we earned them. This place, every inch of it was ours. By year 3, the frame stood like a skeleton reaching up out of the rocks, proud and stubborn. I built those walls out of salvaged cedar boards, scarred and tough like they'd always belonged there. We spent weekends forging balcony rails in my shop back in Ridgefield, then muscled them up the mountain switchbacks one at a time, cussing a blue streak every time a piece almost tumbled off the ravine. Progress was slow, honestly brutal. Weather stalled us, injuries set us back, and there were whole stretches where we couldn't even make the drive up. But we never gave up. Last summer, we finally got the solar panels humming. After years of candles, propane lanterns, and a generator that sounded like it ran on angry bees, we had light. Real, warm, beautiful light. My daughter, she cried the first night those lights came on in her room. And I'll tell you, I just stood outside looking at that roof line cut against the stars, feeling a satisfaction so deep I didn't even have words for it. This spring, it felt like everything was finally coming together. Windows and floors, sanded the last piece of reclaimed redwood siding, hung on the gable a piece I'd saved 6 years just for this. My wife, she teased me. It looked like a museum, but what she really meant was every inch had meaning. This was a statement, and it was almost done. Then, on a morning like any other, I was up on the deck finishing a coat of Stain music drifting out of a Bluetooth speaker, sun burning off the mist when I heard tires crunching on gravel. The only way in was a fire road I'd personally chained off, and I hadn't heard the chain. I looked up, and here come 4 shiny SUVs, bright orange vests, glowing in the sun like a pack of traffic cones. They parked in a line like they owned the place right on my stone pile. Out steps 3 men and 1 woman, all wearing reflective vests, Highland Peaks HOA embroidered right there in navy blue. The woman had short blonde hair, sunglasses sharp enough to cut glass, and a clipboard thick enough to kill a raccoon. She walked up like she'd done it 1,000 times, all business. "You must be Mr. Calloway," she said, flipping her papers like she was checking a recipe. "Karen Larson, Community Director, Highland Peaks." I didn't shake her hand. "You're about 6 years late to welcome me," I told her. She smiled like I'd just confessed to murder. "Actually, your land falls within the expanded perimeter of Highland Peaks as of August 2022, she says. I'm standing there, hands stained with varnish, thinking, "Lady, what are you even talking about?" She shows me a digital map, all pastel zoning blocks, and sure enough, my roof just barely inside the new pink area. "You're not listed as a member," she continues, "and your plans weren't submitted for review. This is an unapproved structure within Highland Peaks HOA." I laughed. Out loud. "I'm not in your HOA," I said. "I bought this land title and deed 6 years back. I've got the receipts, the scans, hell, I've got drone footage of me laying the foundation." She gave me this almost sympathetic look. "Our development expanded with county approval. It's your responsibility to stay informed." She handed me an envelope inside a violation notice, a list of infractions, a deadline to remove or convert the house. I just stared at her. "You think you can walk in here 6 years later and take what I built?" "It's about standards, Mr. Calloway," she said, "protecting the value of our community." Her team scattered over my property like ants, one snapping photos, another measuring who knows what. I kept my cool, but I took out my phone and got pictures of every face, every car, every clipboard. "Leave," I told her. She tilted her head. "You should really consider cooperating. We can expedite compliance." I just smiled all teeth. "That sounds like extortion with extra paperwork." She shrugged. "We'll be in touch." And just like that, they were gone, tires grinding down the slope like they'd already stamped their name on the deed. That night, the envelope sat on my workbench right next to a spindle I was carving for the stairs. I didn't sleep, not from fear, but because I knew what was coming. I'd seen it before back in Tacoma when a developer tried to rezone a whole block one parcel at a time. Same tricks, different hills. This was legal chess, and Karen had just made her opening move. The next morning, I drove into Ridgefield with a folder full of tax receipts, maps, affidavits, proof I'd owned and paid for every inch. The clerk, Jeff, pulled up the latest map. My heart dropped. Now there's a weird pink overlay Highland Peaks buffer zone cutting straight through my house. "Does this mean they own it?" I asked. "No," Jeff says. "It's still yours. But any development inside that overlay could be subject to community regs." One of those gray areas, he called it. I left with more questions than answers. 3 days later, I got a glossy pamphlet invitation to voluntary integration. A year of conditional compliance if I adapted my house to HOA standards or else. I burned it in my wood stove. 2 days after that, they sent Travis Young, shiny and desperate to sound friendly. "We just want to help you become part of something bigger," he said. "You're doing great work here. Nobody wants to tear it down." I told him, "You set foot here again without a court order, I'll file trespass." He smiled, but you could tell he wasn't used to hearing no. And that's when I realized they weren't expecting a fight. They were counting on fatigue. Most folks fold, right? But I'm not most folks. I dug deeper. The map they'd shown me, the buffer zone, they'd shifted my boundary, a slick little digital lie, moved it 60 feet so my house would land right in their jurisdiction. Not legal, not by a long shot. Back to the county I went. Got the real plat maps, the old survey. Sure enough, my line was right. Theirs was fiction. I dug through public records. Turns out Karen, the director, had run the expansion with almost no oversight. The HOA's new buffer wasn't even registered as a taxable jurisdiction. Legally, they couldn't enforce a thing without paying up back taxes, legal fees, the works. I posted every shred of evidence online. YouTube, TikTok, off-grid forums, how HOA tyranny tried to erase my home. People went wild. Stories poured in. Local journalists started calling. A land use attorney named Mabel Lewis, real shark reputation for chewing up developers, she took my case. Within 72 hours, she found the crack. No taxes paid, no legal claim. We filed a formal complaint with the Department of Revenue and dropped a cease and desist on the HOA. It worked. The state opened an inquiry. Reporters showed up. News stories ran. Suddenly, county inboxes were flooded with angry questions. Within weeks, the prosecutor's office launched a formal investigation. Mabel got her hands on the HOA's internal files. Don't ask how. Turns out Karen and her brother-in-law, the GIS consultant, had forged parcel documents, submitted fake signatures, even signed for dead landowners. All to grab up bluff lots for a luxury development, my house front and center in their brochures. The state moved fast. The sheriff arrested Karen fraud forgery conspiracy. The HOA was dissolved. The judge called it an egregious abuse of private governance. They handed down $490,000 in compensation, legal fees, emotional distress, the whole mess. But it wasn't about the money. It was about getting my home back. After the dust settled, I went back up to the ridge. Alone this time. Walked every room, touched every beam. I installed a weather station, finished the last little things, and just for the hell of it built a little tower right where Karen once wanted her glass clubhouse. We held a quiet open house, friends, a few reporters, even some former HOA folks. I posted my deed in a steel frame, hung a sign on the gate. This house was built by hand. Trespassers will be educated. Freedom lives here. But I wasn't done. I started a coalition, Citizens Against Forced HOA Expansion. Forums, Zoom calls, a website to report illegal overlays. Stories flooded in from all over the state. What happened to me wasn't unique. It was a tactic. I testified in front of the Senate, told my story, showed my documents. Together, we got a law passed, the Private Property Protection Act. Made unauthorized HOA expansion a felony. Forced public notification, opt-in signatures, no more quiet thefts in the night. Now the house is quiet. My kids call it the fortress. My wife still calls it madness made out of wood. But every time we light the fireplace, I see her smile. Last week, I climbed up that little tower, coffee in hand, just in time for sunrise. The same canyon, the same sky, untouched. I didn't just win a fight, I got my home back. And I'm telling you now, I don't plan on giving up a single inch ever again.